For those of you new to our learning community, as I said, we like to begin by lifting up bright spots from the field. And before I turn it over to Dr. Balfanz, I want to share a brief bio for each of our three panelists we'll hear from today. We are joined by Jess Sobin. Jess is the High Impact Tutoring Director at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education in Washington, D.C. In this role, she helps design, implement, and lead the OSSE's initiative to expand equitable access to evidence-based tutoring for students across the district, a program that has served more than 22,000 students over 4 years. The high impact tutoring is not only closing academic gaps, but findings also show that high impact tutoring has positive attendance benefits as well. We're also joined by Emilio Ortega, a leader in school attendance transformation, restorative practices, and community partnerships. As a community school manager in Oakland Unified School District, he leads cross-functional initiatives that produced the largest decrease in chronic absenteeism among all middle schools in the district. Under his leadership at West Oakland Middle School, the school achieved a 45% year-over-year reduction in chronic absenteeism. Leveraging his graduate education from Northwestern and corporate background in strategy, marketing, and account management, Emilio brings a systems thinking approach to school leadership, and we look forward to hearing more about that approach. And finally, we are joined by Gary Perez, the Community School Director for the Samara Community School in the Bronx, New York. Gary has worked for Children's Aid for more than 20 years to provide comprehensive community-based supports, first as a student in the Summer Youth Employment Program, to more recent roles in operations and community schools across both Washington Heights and the Bronx. Gary has done this work to not only give back to the community that raised him, but also to try and raise the next generation of leaders. Gary has a bachelor's from City College of New York and a master's in teaching English to students of other languages from Grand Canyon University. Many thanks to all three of you for being here with us today. Following the panel, as I said, we'll be moving into breakout groups and we'll begin with time for Q&A. So now I would like to turn it over to and introduce our moderator for today's panel, Dr. Bob Balfanz, the director of the Johns Hopkins University Everyone Graduate Center. It's all you, Bob.
All right, thanks, Jen. And we're so excited to be able to dig into our panel and bright spots. But just to set this up, I just want to say we're digging into two broad themes today. The first is that a key part of a sort of comprehensive approach to reducing chronic absenteeism for either a school or a district is forming strategic partnerships, right? After you've figured out and got a deeper understanding of why kids aren't coming to school, and you've sort of aligned existing resources and interventions and programs to have sort of a multi-tiered response to that, inevitably there's some areas where there's student needs and not existing resources, or not enough people power to address all the students who need a given type of support. And that's where strategic partnerships come in, which can take many forms. It can be with community organizations. It can be within the district, creating broad partnerships to bring in high impact tutoring. It can be in strengthening family and school relationships and working with partnerships that do that. There's many ways to form those strategic partnerships, but they always become an essential part of that comprehensive solution. And then the other theme we want to explore today is that we know that when you have people-powered supports, whether it be to deliver tutoring or to give wraparound supports or integrated student supports or to increase sort of school family connections, that ultimately that's all about this idea of connectedness and having kids feel connected to school. And we know that happens when kids feel like they're connected to adults, to peers, to a purpose and a place. And so we also want to explore how strategic partnerships sometimes is a benefit of the particular partnership also help with that sense of connection across the students and the community. So those are our themes. And the way we're going to start is we're going to ask each of our panelists first to take a few minutes just to describe the work they do, some of the successes they've had, maybe a lesson they've learned, and then we'll get into a dialogue. So I believe we're going to start with you, Jess. I think that's what the plan is. And we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. As was said, I'm Jess Sobin. I'm very excited to be here, and I work at OSSE, which is the state education agency for DC. And I came on board at OSSE about 4 years ago, kind of in when we were really we had a lot of funds, pandemic relief funds, and the city was looking to use them to support students accelerate their learning at a time when we knew we were going to discover that that disrupted learning had outsized impacts on our students' achievement. So the city turned to high impact tutoring and invested a lot of money into scaling high impact tutoring with a goal of reaching 10% of our students. And we always had the target of focusing those programs on students who are furthest from opportunity or who are economically disadvantaged in the district. So we ha we did that over the course of 3 years with pandemic relief funds. We were able to achieve those scaling goals, and then since then we have, because of what we've learned about the impacts of high impact tutoring, we have been able to sustain that programming in the district. And as was mentioned earlier, we've now reached over 22,000 students. 73% of those students are students who are identified as economically disadvantaged, compared to 50% across the city. So we've had a lot of successes, but I think, and some we really anticipated based on what the extensive research around high impact tutoring and its impact on academic outcomes told us we would find. And we're seeing evidence of that, and our students are in our programs are growing. But what we didn't necessarily anticipate is that we would also find that high impact tutoring improves attendance for students in the district. And the reason we were able to find that is because we've collected lots of data over the years and worked. I mean, speaking to Dr. Balfanz's comment about strategic partnerships, I think we also have found really supportive, helpful partnerships with researchers that have helped us understand what high impact tutoring can really do for our students in the district, and we found those attendance outcomes that way. What you're seeing right here is an infographic that shows how we define high impact tutoring in the district. High impact tutoring is it's not easy to implement. It is not just kind of like homework help after school or ad hoc tutoring with with a tutor that it happens to be available. Although those kinds of supports can be wonderful and very helpful to students, that is not how we define HIT in the district. And we make sure that the high impact tutoring that we are scaling meets standards like it happens multiple times a week. It happens during or adjacent to the school day. It's conducted with consistent trained tutors in small groups that are one-to-one or either one-to-one or small groups with a maximum of 4 students. It's 90 minutes a week. It's consecutive weeks, at least 10 weeks, and we're using high quality curriculum. And the instruction is data driven. So all these pieces need to come together to get the outcomes, both in academics and attendance, that we know our students deserve. So that is what I work on in the district, and I'm excited to share more as the panel continues.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. I believe next up is Emilio. Is that right?
Yes. I gotta get this slide. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emilio Ortega, and I'm a community school manager at West Oakland Middle School in California, Oakland, California. And I'm in a middle school that have roughly about 185 students. And so it's an honor to be on this panel today to kind of share some of the work that we're doing. The work as a community school manager, we wear a lot of different hats at the school. And one of the areas that we focus on is attendance. And one of the things I just want to really highlight some of the successes that we have achieved at West Oakland Middle School. Roughly 95% of our students are on free reduced lunch, and a lot of supports and high needs area and a high needs community. But we think this is an opportunity really to support our students. And as I tell people when they ask me, what's your role? What do you do at West Oakland? It's community school. And it's really about making sure every kid feels safe, supported, and feel like they could be successful at their school. And one of the ways we do this in the first place to do that is in attendance. And so last year we saw relatively severe and moderate chronic absenteeism going down by 45%, and we cut severe absenteeism by 60%. And the way we did this is by three areas. It's one is how do we communicate, how do we connect and collaborate, and finally is how do we celebrate. In terms of communications, we make attendance expectations very clear and understandable for families. Oftentimes, when we talk to families about attendance, we talk about percentages, we talk about these various different absent codes. But for families, we have to be very clear what that looks like. For example, well, oftentimes people will say, your student has an attendance rate of 80%, which is chronic. But for families, 80% is a B, right? When you think about in grades. So what we do is we talk about days missed. How many days your student has missed in the semester or school year? And that has really gotten an impact. Also, we've highlighting what students are missing when they're not at school. For many of the students that we support, students are missing access to a lot of the support services they need, is counseling, access to medical attention or other supports, counseling, tutoring, friends, which is a big thing, friends and all other supports within the school. And then we also utilizes our awareness weeks to really talk and push into our advisory to really talk about the importance of attendance, goals, and actually help them come up with strategies that are relevant to themselves. And then the next part of it is how do we connect? How do we collaborate? The first way is Bobby, you were sharing about the importance of connection. You first have to have a school where students feel connected, right? At our school, roughly, I think the statistics is roughly about 80 or 90% of our students have identified that they feel connected to at least one safe person, and they have at least one friend at our school. So really, that's kind of really the foundation work, is really the connection with their peers as well as the adults. We also have, in terms of the connection and collaboration, is with the cost team, which is coordinate support teams that are really addressing supporting students' needs, as well as partners who are able to bring in additional services and supports that the school cannot provide. And then lastly, one of the key things, and we can talk about in a breakout, is the check-in, check-out program that we've developed at the school that really provides an opportunity of accountability and checking in with students with incentives and other things to really ensure that they're at school, but also help them troubleshoot some of the challenges that they're experiencing that's preventing them from their school. And then lastly, we do is help all students have attendance success plans. So at our school, we're relatively small. We make sure that every student has an attendance success plan. They build it out. What are the reasons why you like coming to school? What are the barriers that come from the school? And then we provide them a list of ways of overcoming those barriers. And then those are things that we want them to review with their parents to really have them come on board to really understand that. And then in that attendance success plan, we provide information about prior year absences as well as current year absences, so parents get an understanding of where their students stand with their attendance and how to help them be successful. And then lastly, which is I think everyone likes, is to be celebrated and acknowledged. At West Oakland Middle School, every week we have morning meetings and we acknowledge students who have perfect attendance. And so oftentimes we talk about perfect attendance for the entire semester or year, but what we do is we look at perfect attendance every week. So maybe you weren't successful the last couple of weeks, but this week you can have an opportunity to be successful. And we give them what we call Phoenix Bucks that they can use at our PBIS store. So we celebrate students with their attendance. We also have attendance advisory attendance competitions during attendance awareness week. And then we also have this targeted celebrations or incentives for our students that are thriving academically, but as well as those who are struggling. So as we're going to talk about in our check-in, check-out program, every 5 days a student comes to school, they get a prize, a snack or a treat. And then if they do it within 15 days, they're invited to a pizza party. And we do this in a period of time to really use those times as really build connection with students, but it's also opportunity for us to connect with students and to really have fun helping them to design strategies and ways of overcoming barriers that are preventing from our school. And so these are a couple of things that we have been doing at West Oakland Middle School that we've found has been very successful to ensuring that students are showing up every day.
Thank you, Emilio. That's wonderful. We're excited to dig into that in a minute. All right, Gary, you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gary Perez. I am the community school director for the Samara Community School. I work in New York City in the Bronx. Um, I work for the Children's Aid, formerly the Children's Aid Society. Basically, what we do is that we have partnered with about 20 to 30 different community schools in New York City, specifically in the Bronx, Washington Heights, and East Harlem and Staten Island. And we have pledged to make sure that we improve the school's performance. And, as many of you know, one of the main performance measures is attendance. If you're not in school, you cannot perform. So, we want to make sure that we connect all of these schools to the greater Children's Aid resources. So that includes, community centers, clinics, foster care, whatever it may be, to make sure that we remove any impediments to making sure that students attend school every day and are successful every single day.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll dig into that. All right, so let's dig into what we heard here, panel. Amelia, I'm going to start with you. So at West Oakland, you adopted like a community school approach, and community schools aim to like bring the community in, and that's easier said than done, right? Because you could even identify student needs, but to actually address them really requires trust and connection, as we've been saying. So I want to explore both those. What did it take to earn the trust of the parents so that when you gave them information about attendance, they were like, I believe you. Well, and I believe you have my students, my son or daughter's interest at heart, and you're not here to get me because my kids aren't in school.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that one of the things about a community school manager is that we wear a lot of different hats at the school, that we support with attendance. We also help coordinate with counseling. We support with partnerships. We also help, and we're one of the school administrators on staff. And so we are on campus every day. So we see students. And so one of the things I think about building trust is when students see you every day, they see you part of the school community, they know who you are. But I also think is that when we are as community school managers providing service and support to families. So one day we might be helping that student get food or connecting with counseling. And so when we're talking to the family, maybe later on about attendance, they know that we have a vested interest in supporting their student because we've been supporting them throughout the entire year. And we've been working with many families for multiple years. And so they see us as a partner. They don't see us as truancy officers. They don't see us as cops. They don't see us as punitive, but people that are coming alongside them to partner with them to help them overcome these barriers. And so I think in terms of the thing about trust is really about being on staff, supporting students, not just attendance, right? It's not, did you show up to school, but hey, how are your families doing? Do you need some supports? Do you need services? So I think when you have a conversation with families and look at them holistically and support them holistically, it makes it easier when you're able to talk with them about attendance and supporting with attendance.
Yeah, that seems spot on. It's like, be there and be helpful. And then let's talk about attendance. That's good. So I just wanted to just go a little deeper on connection too. So you gave us some pretty remarkable statistics from, I worked with a lot of schools, and to say that, 80% of our kids are connected to an adult and to a peer. Like is because oftentimes you'll get the adult connection and people will forget about the peer connection. We'll get these things like, yeah, I like the adults, but the students are mean to me, so I still don't come.
Yeah.
So how did you build those strong peer and adult connections?
Yeah, I think in our school leadership and our team with our culture and climate teams, we're very intentional. Being as a small school, we want to leverage that to our benefit. Oftentimes with number wise, being a small school doesn't really help you with ADA and all these other funding things, but an opportunity for every student to be known and every student be seen. And so when there's issues and challenges, we're able to address that with our RJ team, with our various teams and partners. And so there's a connection there where students can connect with their peers. They're going to see each other all day, every day. And so really being very intentional with our advisory period, with our different very affinity groups. We really try to build these spaces, being very intentional, build connection with students, with themselves, but also with peers, being also the name who their safe person is, and constantly remind that. I constantly ask the kids, hey, if you don't feel safe, who can you who can you reach out to? And I'm not necessarily asking them to say me, but I say, hey, I want you to find someone. If it's not me, that's fine. Find someone that you can feel safe with. And then we constantly ask them that question. And that's one way we are helping to build connection.
Thanks. That's wonderful. So Gary, I'm going to pivot to you now. And, Children's Aid is a strategic partner. Like you're the definition of a strategic partner. And so I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about what you've learned about how you know, sort of like to following up on Amelia, like, be there and be helpful and demonstrate to the school that like you're a big value add and you're not just one more person there to help, but in the end, they got to spend a lot of time managing what you do.
No, you're so right, Doctor. One of the first things that we did at our site was, you know, we first had to address the ghosts in the classroom. That's what we call them, the ghosts in the classroom. And that is, we talk about the parents and the grandparents who attended our school and they remember that school from 20, 30 years ago. It's not the same faculty, but it's still the same families, right? So that was one of the first things that we had to try to tackle. Like, how do you work in a community where teachers and faculty are scared or uncomfortable or don't know how to connect with the families in the community, right? That was the first thing. Then once we figured that out, and as we all know, that's not a figure out one day to the next. That
Right.
is a couple of years, and that's a process, and we're still in it, right? Because now we have new families that have come, and now we try to get them to be part of what we are doing. So the next thing was you really got to convince the school staff, right? The faculty, right? Like the principal, you have to convince them that this is worth their while. So what we did was that we let the principal know, like, we know that you're responsible for attendance and we are here to support you. This is what we're seeing. This is how we're trying to attack attendance. And it changed my principal's mentality. And now she tells me what it is when it comes to attendance, right? But 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't that way. It was the opposite. And about 4 or 5 years ago, right before COVID, the city was like at 25, 27% chronic absenteeism rate. After COVID, we're like the city's like at 35% chronic absenteeism rate in New York City. Our District 12 in the Bronx, is at about 45 to 48% chronic absenteeism rate. But my school is at 16%.
Wow.
Because we're just doing different things. We're attacking it. Emilio, you're like my brother from another mother on the other coast, because you and I are doing the exact same work. Like, it sounds a little different and you got middle school, but we're doing the exact same work. We're doing success planning. We're doing all of that stuff. And, it's just, like I said, you really got to convince the school that you're in it with them. It's not just them by themselves.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, Gary, just as a quick follow-up, that when you got that 16%, did the other schools in the district take notice? Or were they like, oh, well, good for them? But
they did, and it was weird because the school that we bumped, we knew, and I would talk to their community school director all the time and be like, hey, how's it looking at the back of my head? Right. And I'm like messing with them. And they started asking me what I was doing, and I told them, I'm doing what you're doing. Like, I'm copying you. It's just my community is different than yours, right? And then what we also saw was that there were other schools that just didn't care. And that, I think, is the biggest change in everything. Like, you have to care, and everyone has to care. It's not just the principal and myself.
Yeah.
The school aide has to care. School safety, cafeteria people,
Yeah.
Everyone has to care when kids are absent.
And I think what's so important about the work that you're doing and Amelia and others, and the impact of the tutoring in DC, is that, one of the things we're facing now is, many places experience that doubling of chronic absenteeism, and they've seen, some improvements, but they're still far from where they were, which is leading some to, go into this easy space. Oh, I guess this is the new normal. I guess we have to adjust to this, and not recognize that with a comprehensive, sustained effort. Yeah, it takes that 4 or 5 years. It's not overnight, but if you stick with it, try things, learn what works, what doesn't work, keep changing till you find what does work and stick with it, that you can, maybe not exactly back to where we were, but you can get much further back than just like, oh, we sort of have to accept it. And I think that's the thing we've all got to collectively push against. Yes.
I will say one of the things that we talk about, well, two things that we say a lot in my building is lead with love and move at the speed of trust.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, Jess, there's two things I'm fascinated by you among many things. One is the scale you work at, and
Mhm.
second was just, and we'll start with the second, which is when you got this finding back that you were improving attendance as well as reading or math that the tutoring was focusing on. Did that change how you sort of approach things or how you told schools to interact with tutoring or was it pretty much just like this is a great side benefit?
Hmm. That's a great question. And just to start, Gary and Emilio, like amazing work you all are doing. And I'd love for you to come speak to some schools in DC and share your stories, because it's all hands on deck and very human centered and very unique and to each school's context. And you have to be willing to put in the work. But when you are working at scale, like I am, and a little bit more removed from the day to day. What we found fascinating about those attendance findings, yes, it's kind of intuitive, right? That like perhaps tutoring would improve attendance because just to what Gary and Amelia were saying, when you have more people in a building that care about you, that know who you are, that see you multiple times a week, hopefully 3 times, but definitely multiple times a week, for at least 90 minutes, you're building a connection with them, with not only the adult that's in the room, that's in front of you each week, but also with the kids in your group. So if you're not one-to-one and you're in a small group, you build a comfort level with those other students in your group. So you're developing peer relationships too. So intuitively, it makes sense, right? That the kids might feel like there's more accountability and more trust and something maybe hopefully to look forward to, especially for the littles. We have a little bit more hurdles with the older kids because I think there's more of a stigma we're working with around tutoring that we're trying to break through with our high schoolers. So it wasn't totally shocking, but I think what was really helpful in the finding we received was that we saw the greatest impact on attendance with middle schoolers for tutoring. We saw the greatest impact on attendance amongst students who had the highest absentee rates. And we saw the greatest impact on attendance for students who were in programs that met 3 conditions that had lower student to tutor ratios. So that built those closer connections. So they were 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. They were at least 3 to 5 times a week. So they were more times a week. And then also, I'm just making sure I have it, and they were held during the school day rather than after school. So when all of those 3 features were part of the program, we saw the greatest impact on whether or not a session would drive a student to be more likely to come to school. So what that means to us is now each one of those components, they might add expense to a program. They might make it trickier to logistically to coordinate a program. And by the way, we saw positive effects across the board. But it's helpful to be able to have that conversation with school about trade-offs. You can have a 4-to-1 student ratio and do it after school, and your program will most likely, if it's implemented well with all these other features, the research tells us it will support students' academic growth and maybe some attendance. But if you are able to devote a little more resources or work with the schedule in different ways to have those touch points even more times a week, then you could see stronger attendance outcomes. So I think that has, that's something we really work hard to use information that we gather from schools to provide technical assistance and professional development supports through ourselves or strategic partners that we work with, so that schools can be innovative in how they think about structuring their program to get the most impact for kids academically and attendance-wise and social-emotionally.
Thanks. That's super interesting. So my one question, it's a big question. We only have time for a short answer.
Yes.
22,000 kids is a lot of kids. So that's a lot of partners, a lot of additional people power. And so the question is, how do you maintain quality at a scale like that?
Yeah, I mean, you need a quick answer, right?
Yeah.
You need a quick answer. Well, we have a very clear definition for high impact tutoring, as I
Right.
said at the
Yep.
top.
Yep.
And we only fund programs that meet that definition. And sometimes it's hard because there's a lot of great programs out there and they may not have that 90 minutes or be able to deliver that 90 minutes or in the school building. But to us, we are focused on meeting those requirements with the programs that we fund. And then we observe at least twice a year. We work with a nonprofit partner called City Schools Collaborative. They're fantastic. They built out a niche in high impact tutoring, and we work together on providing professional development and those technical supports based on what we observe and based on the lots of data that we collect on attendance from schools. So we really do focus on quality because it is not something where you can just say, if you're doing high impact tutoring, then you're positively impacting students at all. It needs to be implemented in a very specific way and be grounded in really trusting relationships too with students.
Yeah. I mean, this was one of the cases where the details really matter. Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to say a couple of things. One, to our audience, if you have questions, and I'm sure you do, please put them in the chat and our folks will try to get to them as rapidly as they can. Second, we will be having breakout groups where you can go deeper with the area of your choice. And third, we're just going to end with a quick lightning round now. Where I'm just asking everybody to give us, a sentence or so on, their best piece of advice or lesson learned for folks looking to replicate what you've done. And we'll start with Gary.
That's perfectly fine. I would say really quickly, you need to build a culture of attendance. Make sure that everyone has bought in and everyone understands what the expectations are and everyone is bought in.
Wonderful.
From top to bottom, like everyone.
Everyone needs everyone. That's the way.
Everyone.
Right.
Teachers, parents, students, cafeteria staff, school safety, everybody.
All right, Emilio, sorry.
Yes, I think it's also in terms of your perception of attendance. Prior to this work, I used to think of kids not coming to school almost like the Ferris Bueller. I don't know if you remember that movie, where kids are just playing hooky. Kids don't want to go to school, but it's very complicated. And I think if we approach it in things about helping kids identify those barriers, whether it be habits, whether it be household responsibilities, if you approach it, we're thinking about it is how do we can address some of the barriers that are preventing the school students that come to school and helping them to remove those barriers to show up. And so I think your perception and approaching attendance can help that.
Yeah. It's I'm cheating now, but I have to add one thing. Just we saw surveys from principals, and they really emphasize the sort of household responsibility angle. A lot of kids, especially the lower income and higher poverty, and often multi-generational families where they often were taking care of the grandparent or great aunt who took care of them, right? And there's a lot of stuff going on outside of school that isn't always transparent. All right, Jess, bring us home. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'll say look at and really listen to the data regularly. So I mean that in terms of like the quantitative numbers. What are the attendance numbers telling you? Drill it down to the grade bands, the students that you're looking at. Look at the data and listen to the data, but also the data, the anecdotal data, the qualitative data, the like what you hear from teachers and students, and support and pivot accordingly.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. These were wonderful, really grounded, really good examples for folks to learn from, and really great success stories. So let's give a congrats and a thanks to our panelists, and then we'll kick it back over to you, Jen. Thank you.